Tanks. But what are tanks? And how do tanks? And where is How Tank? Well, tanks were invented by Sir Henry Tank in the little town of Tankington in New Mexico. Okay, I'll be serious. Tanks! Big things with big guns, but where do tanks come from? And which tank is the best tank? All these questions and more shall be asked by me. A lot of people think this is the first tank. They are wrong. Let me put it like this. When I was 7, I drew a picture of a spaceship. It had detailed interiors and everything. It could fly, shoot lasers, go to other galaxies. But even though I drew it, I can hardly claim credit for inventing Earth's first intergalactic space travel machine, can I? Ah yes, it is the future. Congratulations, Mr. Future Scientist Man. You have invented the impossible. A machine that can travel to other galaxies.
But wait!
The audience cries.
These kids from 2,000 years ago invented it first!
The crowd boos and throw things, and then they build a statue of me. And see, that's never going to happen now, is it? Credit for the invention goes to the first person to actually build it, not come up with the idea. And Da Vinci's idea never worked. Purposefully, it never worked. This is not a tank. Stop trying to pretend it is. Neither is this, or this Soviet thing. This is called a big wheel landship. It was a popular design idea at the time. They built a mock-up prototype, and it immediately sank into a swamp. It didn't work. That's why, none were ever built. Though the Soviets still keep referring to it as a tank because they like to claim they invented it. Or this. You want to talk about this? How about we talk about this thing? You want to do a Lindy Page style 3-hour-long video on the entire community of military enthusiasts who generally thought attaching big wheels to battleships and driving them ashore would be a good idea? Because these are the same kind of people who think future tanks would have 2 guns and hover about using magic. Or as we like to call them, idiots. And trust me, in the military enthusiast community, there is a lot of them. But we'll talk about them later.
You will never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
So, with that out of the way, what actually did kick off tank design? What was the first real tank? Well, in 1914, something very interesting happened. Yes, it's World War I! An old man that a lot of people like but no one really knows gets killed by an assassin. The country that leased him out to the other country threatened that country with war. That country then appeals to another country and says, come help us. And the first country then starts appealing to other countries to help him. And then before you know it, bullshit, everyone is at war. And about 1 million people die within the first 5 months. Because war has technology has very, very rapidly changed, and no one really knows exactly what to do. The upper echelons of every military structure and every European nation are filled to the brim with stuffy old colonels and mustache-wearing upper-class toffs who have basically become generals because they have a lot of money. Men are cut down left, right, and centre. A stalemate ensues, and for years, trenches full of soldiers sit and stare at each other across a minefield of fortifications. The upper-class twattery have absolutely no idea what to do outside of the only tactic that they know, which is getting everyone to jump out of their trenches and charge at the enemy. The results of this were less than encouraging. Troops were dying by the truckload over turfs of land no more than a metre wide. And the ones that were surviving were starting to question their leader's ability. Talk of revolution was in the trenches, and in Russia, revolution happened. In France, revolution was on everyone's lips. Troops were refusing to go down to the front lines, refusing to go into this first line of trenches, and refusing to fight. So a new solution had to be provided, something that would break the stalemate. Lots of ideas were tried. Bigger artillery, grenades, rifle grenades, bigger artillery, mortars, this slingshot thing, bigger artillery, this medieval crossbow that fired tiny balls? I don't understand. Bigger artillery, and whatever the hell this thing is. But it was all to no avail. Thankfully, someone had already come up with a solution. Famed writer H.G. Wells had envisioned a motorized vehicle armed enough that would be immune to machine gun fire and would be able to carry its own gun to destroy fortified positions and drop off troops to capture defences. Now, H.G. Wells being H.G. Wells, who came up with ideas like this.
Good heavens. That's a dress? This was intriguing. I wonder just how far women would permit this to go.
Had envisioned an upturned soap dish that fired a laser gun. But the idea caught the public's imagination, and discussions on how this new weapon would work were rampant in the street. There were, of course, two problems. For one, the general public have absolutely no idea how military strategy works or how a military vehicle should work. And for two, this weapon already existed. It was called the armoured car. It was effectively a civilian car armed with steel plate and a machine gun on top. Rolls-Royce had begun producing a dedicated military version in 1914 that was so effective it was still being used in World War II. And there are still many examples around today, granted, in museums. But that wasn't the problem. The problem was the area between the trenches, no man's land, was covered in craters, huge holes left by artillery, as well as large metal spikes, barbed wires, mines, and mud that had the consistency of glue and acted like quicksand, sucking everything down, much like the mood whenever you walk into the room. Being immune to machine gun bullets wasn't the problem. Having something that could cross a trench, and then cross that terrain, and be immune to machine gun bullets, was the problem. So, in 1915, everybody's favourite savage one-liner dropping gangsta war criminal Winston Churchill set up the Landship Committee. If I was to explain the Landship Committee to you, you need to remember several things. Number one, this is in Britain, and Britain has a lot of weird, clappy-trappy, upper toffery, boo-ha bureaucracy to go through. Number one being that the Naval Admiralty, the Board of Naval People, are very, very important. They have a lot of resources, and they have a lot of priority over resources of men, of dockyards, because the Navy is incredibly important. And they get very, very, very pissed off at the Home Office, because into that suddenly comes the Royal Air Force. And the Royal Air Force have complete autonomy. They are their own thing, and now they need resources. They need metal to build planes and men to equip them and fly them and maintain them and train them, and they need their own airfields and everything, and that pisses the Admiralty off because that's their resources. They're being taken away for something else. So how do you think they would feel if a third competitor suddenly appeared on the field, also needed their own things, and that was a bit of a problem. So Churchill, in his pimpness, mightiness, decided just to ignore all that and do it himself. Literally. I mean, not literally. I mean, he didn't just go out into a field and go, I should build a machine that will win the war, and then start banging things. No, he didn't do that. I mean, that would be amazing if he did, but that's not what he did. What he did was he got some people together and he said, we'll build a machine. Sorry, I'm not doing the Charles right. We'll build a machine. Churchill. That's what he did. That's how he sounds in my mind. We shall fight him on the beaches and on the landing grounds and in the pubs and in the fields, and I shall kick their bloody ass. Yes. Landship Committee, right. So they test out a bunch of various machines, like this one, which looks like a tram. It's called an induction, I don't know. This one, which is a big wheel landship, a bigger wheel landship, and an even bigger wheel landship they actually planned to build. And then eventually realized, and this thing with the dinner plates on the wheels, I don't understand. And then they realized that tracks work best. And the vehicle they're testing here is an artillery tractor, which is just designed to pull artillery. And this particular machine, the man who came up with the design was told, maybe you should put a gun and some armor on this thing and see how that works. And he refused to do it because he just didn't want to. Eventually, the military catch on to what Churchill and the squad are up to and seize control of their operation. But by then, Churchill has something to show them. So he invites the top brass of the British military, royalty, a bunch of politicians, and some guy who had a camera to film everything, out into the middle of a muddy field in the rain, and in front of them, Big Willie, the second tank ever built, later renamed to Mother, because it's the mother of all tanks. There, of course, had been a tank built before that, the actual first ever tank, Little Willie, which many claim wasn't a real tank because it didn't have a gun. These people are idiots, and you can go ahead and ignore them. There was a gun turret on it, and it looked a bit like this. Here's a picture of it in real life. Sadly, it has a tarp over it to prevent the clever Hun, who's always watching, from figuring out what this thing really is. But you can see the outline. So everyone is staring at this box thing as it drives around a muddy field, up and down very steep hills, made to represent a trench, goes over barbed wire, goes over a few areas, obstacles. And it's pretty obvious to everyone who's present that this is it. This is the solution. This is the answer to breaking the stalemate. And as one, they all come together and immediately start arguing. And I think it would have went a little something like this. Many hours later, the Minister of Munitions said he'd do it, because it was raining and he just wanted to get home. That man was Lord George, who would eventually become Prime Minister. There's a fact for you. The vehicles would be produced in artillery factories, and this is the bit everybody gets wrong. They were codenamed buses, until it was decided that they wouldn't tell the factory workers what they were building, and told them it was water-carrying tanks. And the name tank stuck. So the workers got to work, and after several months, the first tank was born.
A decade before the talkies, a soldier addresses the audience directly, while behind the screen, a real actor speaks his lines. Ladies and gentlemen, I have but one word to say to you. Subscribe.
Hello. If you're seeing this, then you've watched the entire video, the whole way through. Amazing. Thank you very much. Thank you for watching. My name's LazerPig, and this video was an experiment. I've decided I don't want to be a gaming channel because let's be honest, the market for YouTube gaming is just a little bit, tiny bit oversaturated. And yeah, I know history. I'm very passionate about history, and I would like to do more historical content. So if you like this video, you know, do the usual shit. You know, press the subscribe button, leave a comment, hit the like. It doesn't harm you. It helps me. It helps me quite a lot, and I'll know that you liked it. And if you didn't like the video, leave a comment anyway, and tell me why, and then I'll try and fix it for the next video. Because as always, my next video will be better, hopefully, unless like I die in a tragic accident, or I become overcome with the depression and realize that this entire thing was a tragic mistake, and then I'll go to work in a canned goods factory making cans of beans all day. Please save me from the bean factory. I don't want to make beans all day. Anyway, thank you for watching, if indeed you still are, and I hope to see you next time. With love. Kiss, kiss. Mwah.
Blissfully unaware of the giant crab which comes to destroy him. Yes! Go, my child! Feast on their flesh!
These are some other videos that I made. They're okay, I guess. I mean, you can watch them if you want. You don't have to. I mean, I would like it if you did. How you doing? How's the weather? Yeah?